If Kevin Samuels was right, how much more the men of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which you women refuse to obey the voice of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which who is the voice of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai? It's the prophets, which are men. All right. I'll read this real quick. In 2 Kings 17 and 13. Salakia. 2 Kings 17 and 13. Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants, the prophets. And again, because the Lord always spoke through his prophets. And who are the prophets? They're men. All right. Strictly of the sons of Israel. All right. Isaiah 32. Isaiah 32 and 9. Rise up, ye women that are at ease. Hear my voice, ye careless daughters. Give ear unto my speech. So again, as far as the voice of Yahweh Shema Shai, who are they? They are the prophets, which are men. We go to another one in Genesis 3. Genesis 3 and 8. And they heard the voice of the Lord power, walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord, power amongst the trees of the garden. All right. And that's often what happens. All right. Before the destruction takes place, the Lord sends the warnings, and it comes by way of his men, because who is this voice of Yahweh walking in the garden? Again, it's the prophets. And they mentioned in the cool of the day. So while you have time, all right, again, the Lord's going to send that warning via his men. All right. The Lord always, the Lord, he strictly deals with the men. There's plenty of scriptures, plenty of examples. I'm going to grab another example. In Judges 9, I'm going to start at 1. And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So, again, just another example of how the Lord sets up the order, and that order under Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Under Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, it starts with the men, which again, you women, this is why you're just going to have to find out the hard way. All right? Because you refuse to take heed unto the men of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which is the voice of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Because again, if Kevin Samuels was correct, how much more Yahweh Shemal Shai? All right, and before I get on with this video, I want to give all praises to Yahweh Shemal Shai, and double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, and shalom to you, hopefully elect. I'm Brother Yahweh Call from Great Millstone, Orlando, and again, I got this video here. I'm gonna play a certain section. This video here by the Poor Man's Podcast, because this washed up bag, all right, Tracy Ellis Ross has basically, been in the gossip as of lately. Because this chick, man, she's basically crying out because she's 50 plus, right? And complaining about being, well, here it is, she's 50 plus, posting naked photos on the internet and complaining, whining about being single, and no children, and why no man wants to take her serious, and again, this guy, Kevin Samuels, predicted this before the Lord took him out of here, before the Lord took his spirit, right? And again, man, if he was right, how much more the men of Yahweh Shemal Shai, right? So without further ado, I'm gonna play this video. Fair use. This is strictly for informational purposes. I'm not making any type of monetary gain. So without further ado.
You're not putting together recipes for your granddaughters to learn so that when they get a husband, they know how to maintain that man and feed their family in a healthy way that's going to give them longevity. You're not doing no family reunions. You out here getting recorded by some 22-year-old on a cell phone saying, like, look, this is the girl from Girlfriends, Tracy Ellis Ross, in my phone, and I get to call her anytime and get the cheeks. This is what you're bragging about. This is embarrassing. 52 years old. This is insane. And by the way, if a guy had this mentality about this situation, he would be told that they would be chanting for him to be locked up. If a 52-year-old man came out and said, I only date younger women, blah, 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 people would have an issue with that. But because it's her, it's no issue. And the reason why basically she's saying she's willing to date young men is because men have become, young men especially, have become so feminized that they don't have any expectations in their relationship. But it's okay, because that same feminization leads to them never committing. This is why you see marriage on the decline. So these guys, yeah, maybe they smashing Tracy Ellis Ross because she got the yams. But ain't none of these 22-year-olds looking to commit to you, and you think that it's a flex as a 52-year-old woman to be bragging about you have the attention of 22-year-olds? They'll sleep with anything as long as they can get their thing wet. That's what it's all about when you're a 22-year-old man. And with that being said, that's exactly what it is. You think that they're open and they care because they're sitting and listening, but all they doing is nodding until they get them cheeks, man. At that age, you're just doing and saying whatever it takes to sleep with women. As you get...
And I say this all the time, unfortunately, for the most part, these women don't have any use, women have become useless for the most part. So, this is why men, all right, you just ought to, supplant, this is what often takes place. All right, just to get their rocks off. Because, that's what basically it's come down to, unfortunately for you women. All right, that's what it's come down to, because this whole age era of, men are like, you have these movements, MGTOW movement, men going their own way, men waking up, we're in the age of the passport bros. All right. Men are turning away from marriage. Men just don't want to take you women serious anymore. And this type of attitude, this type of mindset is a part of the reason, because it's become a culture that these women, they brag about, you brag about being basically useless, worthless, you know? And quite frankly, it's not cute, you know? And again, you wonder why a man doesn't want to take you serious, right? You want to claim that all men are dogs, which, hey, I'll gladly take that title because, hey, dogs are loyal, you know? They say men are like dogs and women are like cats. And I wholeheartedly agree because, like I said, dogs, they're loyal, man. And that's why recently I've been saying, you know, we can't even refer to these women as bitches anymore because dogs they're loyal. Cats, they tend to you when they feel like it. They do what they want to do when they feel like it, which fits, you know, the characteristics oh so well. Right, but playing some more.
Older, you start to have a little bit more standards. You started not to be willing to lie because you value your peace more than you value coochie now. But at 22, them little boys just nodding and waving and saying whatever they need to say and listening to your sob story until they get the cheeks. And then you're never going to see them again. And even if she's talking about men in their 30s, it's the same thing. If men want to smash you, they'll sit there and nod and agree and say that they're open and they don't judge and believe in whatever you believe. But then ultimately, you're just going to end up in a zone where they just sleep with you because they realize that you have no characteristics for a long-term relationship. And this woman is 52 years old. Ain't no younger man who has a vision of starting a family going to commit to a 52-year-old woman who's not capable of having kids anymore. It's not about the man that you can attract. It's about the man you can keep as a woman. And at 52 years old, you would think that she would have some understanding of that by now. It's crazy.
Okay. Crazy tale. But
I'm sorry.
But one of the reasons, though, that because I had to ask myself that question, I was like, what is this about?
Yeah.
Because I want a partner. And so often, and it's not just that I'm older, I'm also very embodied. I am a full, very whole person who knows myself, who is in charge of my life, and who lives a very full, just robust life. So it's not just age, it's like life experience and sort of a difference. But I had to ask myself the question, why? Why does this keep sort of coming up other than they're hot and gorgeous? There's that. But a lot of men my age are steeped in a toxic masculinity and have been raised in a culture where there is a particular way that a relationship looks. And anything that
when they're talking about a particular way a relationship looks, they're looking at the feminine role. Every time and every woman you talk to, they're going to have an opinion of what the man should do. I guarantee you in her ideal man, she still wants him to protect. She still wants him to provide. She still wants him to make a decent amount of money to contribute to her lifestyle. But when they say that they have an issue with how the men look at relationships, usually they have an issue just with what the men expect in terms of reciprocation. If you're a man and you're paying all the bills in your house, in modern terms, you shouldn't expect for your woman to also do majority of the domestic labor.
And you see, that's where the hypocrisy comes into place because a woman, like they say, a woman want a traditional man, but they don't want to be a traditional woman themselves. And again, you women wonder why you're lonely, right? You women wondering why you're sitting in that 3-bedroom condo that you brag about so much, but you're in that bitch by yourself, you know, drinking yourself to sleep every night by yourself, if you even have any cats.
Bad man. So usually when they're talking about gender roles that they don't want to follow or not having to follow gender roles, they're never talking about the male role. They still want you to protect and provide just like we always have traditionally. Oftentimes they're just talking about women not having to do anything to reciprocate via the female role. And that's what she's talking about here. She's talking about men of the past used to have expectations for their women. Now men don't have expectations for what a woman should contribute to a relationship.
It's the smell of that for me.
Yeah.
I did enough of it where I was controlled and felt like I was a possession or whatever those things were, or prize, I have no interest in it, and I will not do it again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're less of a possession. You're a possession in marriage, but you're less of a possession when a 22-year-old just shoots up the club because you're 52 and you can't have children anymore. You're less of a possession in that scenario, of course.
I was going to say,
this is modern empowerment.
It's a generational thing. So it didn't matter how you met them, or is it just
I'm
kind of the
saying,
guys you're meeting?
That's obviously
Too big of a
it's a generalization,
Yeah.
but because I have dated men my age, there is a difference. There is an openness that occurs with a younger man around whether it's gender fluidity or not even having.
Basically saying she values young men for being more like women. And this is what they want from you, young men. This is why all of the programming tells you to be pretty much gay. They want you to behave like a woman or you're not a man. That's what they'll tell you, at least. They want young men to become women. And you have to be careful of this, even if you have a young boy in the school system, because if your young boy in the school system does not behave like a woman or a girl, meaning he's 7 years old and he can't sit still for 8 hours, powers. They want to try to get him on drugs or try to act like he has behavioral issues when really he's just a young boy and they don't understand the difference. So she's basically saying she values younger men for being more feminine, essentially.
Issue with homosexuality. I mean, something as basic as that.
Yeah.
That there's
No, I
times
hear you.
where I'll be, sitting across the table from somebody and just like, what did you just say?
Yeah, what century are you?
Like, oh my God.
Where's your horse and buggy?
Yeah, like, I'm so sorry.
And your bedpan.
Yeah, for real.
Chamber pot.
Yeah, your chamber pot. Your chamber pot. Like, where I'm just like, yeah, this is not a match.
Yeah.
And I have long been past the age where I feel like it's my job to teach somebody or grow them up.
Yeah.
That I'm not interested in. So, but it's interesting. I mean, there's so many different philosophies on dating, and I have come up with mine. I
don't want to teach somebody or grow them up with you're dating 23-year-old men. You genuinely cannot make this stuff up. But Kevin Samuels had an opinion on women like Tracy Ellis Ross, and I think you guys should take a look at it because it's very interesting how he predicted these things even just years ago, man. RIP to the GOAT. Before I play the clip, RIP to the GOAT. I wish the brother was still around so he can give his take on certain situations. But yeah, man, let me roll the clip.
Men are not selecting Tracy Ellis Ross's. Not for marriage. She can still get it. There are a lot of guys who would slay that easy. Would have no problem even being seen with her in public. But would a man that she wants do it? Let's say, imagine the man that Tracy Ellis Ross would get. Chances are he would be younger. Maybe some up-and-coming young actor. Can you imagine a woman like Tracy Ellis Ross with a 58-year-old CEO of a Fortune 50 company, an accomplishment? No, they needed a completely different woman. And that's the ultimate point. The longer you're by yourself, the less likely you are a good fit for anybody else. Tonight we're going to talk about high value versus finesse, but this is important. Here's some things like...
So you see, that's the whole point. All right. It's just cold how, Yahweh Shema Shah, he sets up certain players, because, this dude, Kevin Samuels, he was on point with a lot of things. And this is why there was this big celebration, especially amongst so-called black women, when the Lord took his spirit. All right. And, a lot of these other guys, like, what's this guy? This guy from the Fresh and Fit podcast. All right. These guys like Andrew Tate, this guy, Coolio, whatever his name is, from the No Fugazi podcast, which, he's been coming out to be a Fugazi. All these guys are getting exposed because, all these guys, they take bits of information from the scriptures, which, the Wadi Halbashmal Shah, we have real men, real father figures, all right? Because our whole spirit of basically the real pill movement, it's in the scriptures, and our apostles have been going into these things. So these guys, man, and that's why, like I said, the Lord set certain of these guys up, and I mentioned all those guys because they're being exposed, and they're going to continue to, they're going to decline, and they're going to continue to be on the decline. All right, because they make monetary off of the scriptures. They monetize, make monetary gain off the scriptures, which the Lord is against. But it just goes to show you, like I said, man, as on point as this guy Kevin Samuel, he was on point with a lot of things, but he ain't no prophet of Yahweh Shema Shai. And again, it goes to show you the spirit, because like I said, when the Lord took this dude's spirit, it was a big celebration, especially amongst the so-called black women community, and how much more, again, when it comes to the because this man wasn't no prophet. None of these guys are prophets. All right. But how much more the prophets, which are men, like the scriptures say, have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? And of course, truth, it cuts. All right. This truth, man, is bitter, man, and which a lot of people don't want to deal with the bitterness, like the Apostle Tahar says, the nastiness of the scriptures. People don't want to deal with the bitter truth. You got a lot of so-called women. All right. They claim to be Christians, but, when certain scriptures like a woman that's supposed to be silent in the churches, when scriptures like that come out, they don't want to deal, But hey, nevertheless, one way or the other, you women are going to get in order, or you're going to fall in line. All right. And not only that, you will fall in line to a man of Yahweh Shema Shai, whether you like it or not. Because everything is returning to its origins. All right. Order is being established, reestablished. So I'm going to grab this. Wisdom of Solomon 8. Everything is returning to its origins. And as much as it's like nails on the chalkboard for you women, as much as you don't want to hear it, like this washed up bag was talking about, I feel like a possession. Well, you are a possession. All you women are a possession to a man of Yahweh Shema Shai, just like we're a possession to Yahweh Shema Shai. Right? Well, that sounds like slavery. It is slavery, goddammit. And it's a matter of who you're in servitude to. All right? Because listen, we are slaves for Hamashiach, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you women are too westernized. You're too Babylonianized. And that's why you can't deal with the scriptures with a Western mindset. Because there's, nothing wrong. You hear the word slavery and you immediately think worst case scenario. You think being locked up in a basement somewhere, being fed 3 times a week or some nonsense like that. Nah, man. We're slaves to Yahweh Shema Shai, and we love it. We have Stockholm Syndrome in righteousness. Because that's basically what Stockholm Syndrome is developing that affection for your slave master, your captor, right? Because of, certain of the benefits that you may get or whatever the case may be. So we have Stockholm Syndrome in righteousness, and we are slaves to Yahweh Shema Shai, and we love it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, again, you women, your mind has been too tainted, too polluted. And that's why the best remedy for the majority of you women will be fire, Wisdom of Solomon 8:1. Wisdom reacheth from one end of the wisdom reacheth from one end of the Slakia. Wisdom reacheth from one end to another mightily, and sweetly doeth she order all things. So you see, everything is returning to its natural estate. All right. Order is being reestablished, and you women, one way or the other, will get yourselves in order, either on this side or the next. All right. I'm going to grab another one in Isaiah 24. And this is why the world, quite frankly, hates the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai. Because Isaiah 24, you people hate order, especially you women, you hate order. Isaiah 24:1, behold, the Lord maketh the earth empty and maketh it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof. So you see the Lord's, because it mentioned the Lord's turning things upside down, and really the Lord's turning things right side up, because everything's already turned upside down. But for these people that love wickedness, for you women that love wickedness, all right, you see the Lord's really flipping the tables right side up, how it's supposed to be. Like I said, order is being reestablished and everything's returning to its natural estate. All right, in an orderly fashion. All right, which that's like kryptonite to you women. Being in order is like kryptonite to women, as well as accountability. It's like kryptonite to women. But regardless, one way or the other, you're gonna get down with the program. I just find it funny. Like I said, if this dude was right, he ain't no man of Yahweh Shema Shai. How much more the men of Yahweh Shema Shai, the actual voice of Yahweh Shema Shai, the Lord's men, Lord, one of this was edifying, giving all praises to Yahweh Shema Shai. Shalom to you, hopefully elect.